joined from different parts of the world. Welcome to the Leadership Conversation, yet another webinar series with TaUB Solutions. Before we start, a few housekeeping items here. So we're going to record the webinar today, and the recording will be shared with all the participants within 48 hours. I request all of you to please, all the attendees to please be on mute so that there isn't much disturbance. If you have any questions, please feel free to add your questions in the question and answer panel. We are going to have a 15 minutes of QA session towards the end of the webinar. The last 15 minutes will be dedicated to that. Also, we are going to run some live polls during the webinar, so request all of you to participate actively because they are going to shape the way the discussion progresses today. And I will just take a moment to introduce you to TaUB Solutions. Sorry. Okay. So TaUB Solutions is a global training and consulting firm empowering digital and business transformation. We have over 11 plus years of experience, and we provide capability building in digital transformation side and the business transformation side. On the digital transformation side, our area of focus is site reliability engineering, observability, DevOps, AIOps, and some tools and platform-based training. On the business transformation side, we have business relationship management, BRM, experience level agreements, change management, humanizing IT. We also provide gamification learning and simulations with global presence across the globe. Going back to today's webinar, Reframing IT from Service Delivery to Value Creation, I'd like to introduce our speaker for tonight. I have someone who has been living this shift from over several years, Pauline Marchand. She is the portfolio director for total experience at Computer Center, one of Europe's largest IT service firm. She has led international transformation program. She has built the experience management office that sits inside Computer Center's managed services. And she has a long-standing voice arguing that technology should, in her own words, behave like a likable person, empathetic, and respectful. Welcome, Pauline. Thanks for joining us today. Our host tonight is Mr. Kalidas. Kalidas is heading enterprise sales and India operations at TaUB Solutions, a seasoned technology leader with over 4 decades of experience working with companies like Wipro, Microsoft, and HCL. I'd now like to hand over to Kalidas to start the webinar.
Yeah, thanks, Neeta. Thanks a lot, and welcome everyone. And thanks a lot for joining us for this enthralling session for the next 1 hour. And we will be having this conversation, which I think a lot of IT leaders need to be having right now. And in my opinion, most of the IT leaders are not having these conversations. Forgive me. For years, IT has been measured by how reliable it delivers a service. Uptime, tickets closed, SLAs met, and IT has managed accordingly as a cost center. But something has shifted, quietly, and now in the recent time, quite visibly. The conversation in the boardroom now, it's not about is IT working anymore. It's about is IT creating a value? And in my humble opinion, these are two very different questions. So to unpack this today, as Neeta introduced, I have Pauline with me here. Really thankful to you, Pauline, for taking your time out. As Neeta introduced, she has led international transformation programs. She's built the experience management office at Computer Center Management Services. She's been a long-standing voice arguing about technology, in her own words, should behave like a person. So, Pauline, over to you if you'd like to say just hello to the audience.
So I'll say hi to the audience, and I'll say that the experience management office, I didn't build it myself, right? It was a team as well with me, and I'm lucky as well to be surrounded by, very smart people within computer center to drive experience internally, but as well with our customers. Thanks for having me today, Kelly.
Thanks a lot, Pauline. So let's just get into it. Just like Neeta introduced, I look after TaUB Solutions Enterprise Sales. I'm based out of Bangalore. TaUB operates in all geographies: India, APAC, Middle East, and Africa. But today, like I said, it's not about TaUB alone. So before we start, I'd like to, quickly, this is what I always do in any of my leadership conversations, to get a quick pulse of what our audience is all about. So I'm just opening up an opening poll. I would like everyone to basically, I'm launching this poll. The question is that how does your organization currently measure the success of IT service delivery? So this thing is on your screen. Please choose one of those options here, and I will share the results and, probably discuss this with Pauline. Yeah. So the answers are coming in thick and fast. I'll just give a couple of more seconds. So Pauline, quickly, what would you expect?
I probably expect between 60-70% between A and B. But if some people are here, it's because probably they're thinking about it. So yeah, probably 30% on the last two ones, I guess. And hopefully we already had some people that, are already deployed XLA and it's working on the side, even if it's a small part. But yeah, I guess from my perspective, what I'm seeing more and more in the market is like we have more and more ask around XLAs, but people don't understand what is XLA, and they just put, they just rename an SLA with some experience word in it. So I guess that's as well the understanding we need to have on the market and help and educate the people on that.
Great. So let me share the results. Can you see the results? You're bang on.
Should have put some bets on.
So what's your take? And then, just want to know, this is our, baseline, which, like I said, we do it for every webinar. So, any quick thoughts on this before I...
Yeah, as I say, I'm not surprised. Most of, organizations are looking at it and they want to do it, but what is difficult is how you bring, the people together, how you make the journey works as well. And I think, well, it's good if people are attending today. I hope they're going to learn something after our conversation, Kelly.
Right. So let's just deep dive into this topic. So let's start with the why. The IT industry has lived very comfortably with SLAs for the last 30 years. They are actually very clean, they are measurable. And when actually the contracts come up for kind of a revision or basically to rebid, you can really defend SLAs very tightly. So what's changed, Pauline? Why is the conversation suddenly been talking about experience?
So I think it's not one thing only, right? And it's several converging at the same time. So for me, expectations have changed because the workforce, have changed. And employee now, they compare, their workplace experience to what they get as consumers. So having an SLA of 99.9%, doesn't really matter if the experience is consistently frustrating. And I'm talking about not friction, I'm talking about frustration. The second part is IT has become a business channel. As you say, IT is now in most organizations the enabler, not only a cost center. And I think because all the different functions in organization need to digitalize themselves, well, IT is directly, shaping customer experience. So if the internal people have a poor experience, this will translate quickly in business impact, I think. And the third one, I think, is what we see more and more. That's a disconnect between IT reports and what usually users will feel. So the SLA are green, but still, the user are not happy. So that's what we call, the famous watermelon effect. And I think that's what, when we bring XLA, it's about that. It's about reconnecting, those two things, the operational performance, because we need to measure it, but as well the human experience. So that's really the way we need to act on for the business. And then that's how we will stop as well this watermelon effect.
Correct, correct. So yeah, just for the participant to understand what watermelon effect is, what Pauline is, it's a well-known term now, is essentially trying to say that your SLAs are green from outside, where a watermelon is obviously looks green from outside. When you cut the watermelon, you have this bleeding red color. So the customer is bleeding, even though if your SLAs are green. So let's unpack that, Pauline, a little more. Can you give an audience a very concrete example? I mean, of course, without naming any client, where you see that the SLA dashboard is clean, is very green, but the user experience is red at the same time.
So I think I have thousands of examples, to be honest. So this will talk probably for most of the customer we had when, previously to integrate expense management in it. But I think most of it, so we started the XLA journey on our side with the service desk accounts, right, and customer. So when we were looking at service desk, it was like 98%, SLA overall. So, well, for us, it was like, as a managed services provider, we're like, well, people are really happy, right? Because SLA are saying, it's 98%. It's almost, perfection. Let's put it like this. But when we looked at the customer satisfaction and the user satisfaction that we introduced with the sentiment part within our XLA journey, it was above 50% only.
Wow.
So the issue was not the speed, right? How speed the people were answering to the phone or to the chat or to whatever platform they had. It was about the frustration from a user perspective. So we understood that the user, they were calling multiple times for the same issue, but each interaction was being measured as a success because we were closing the ticket just after the call because it was, solved, but they were calling again and again. So I think it's really this shift that we need to operate, right? To go from a system-based resolution to user-perceived resolution. And so on different customer, we did that. And probably in between like 4 and 6 months, we've seen the behavior change, because that's really the point. When you introduce XLA, you don't really fix the delivery. You just change what good looks like from a user perspective. And I think that's what really matters when we're looking at experience.
Right. So that's powerful. So what you're basically saying that it isn't really a measurement problem, it's actually a behavior problem. And the metric actually drives the behavior. Is that correct?
It's fundamentally a behavior problem driven by the measurement. So organization will optimize very effectively for what they measure, basically. If you measure speed, you get speed. If you measure volume, you get volume. What we do with our XLA is shift their measurement towards experience and outcomes. And that's where the value comes in, because the conversation moves from efficiency to impact. And I think that's something that people need to realize. So you're not longer asking, how fast are we resolving the incidents? You're asking, are we enabling the end users to be more productive, to adopt, the new tool that the IT department has put in place? And are we enabling as well the revenue growing or protection or whatever? And that's really a shift as well in the way we converse with our customer. And I had a great example with that, which was a customer where, well, basically we were not getting to the SLA. So we were below the SLA, but still the customer wanted to stay with us because the experience that the end user were having were great. And it was a transition with another service provider, and the people were not calling anymore because they were not happy with the service. And when we changed, to this experience management model, well, the users were really, really happy. So what we've done, we reviewed the SLA with the customer and say, maybe there are some that you're measuring, but actually we don't really care. And I think that's something people need to think about. SLA were introduced in the 80s and 90s, right? We are in 2026, and the IT world has changed a lot as well. So that's something we really need to focus on. And whenever, I'm with customers, so operational people will get it most of the time. But what happens is, like, it's the buyers the people will buy the service and so on, that we need to convince as well. So it's a journey as well for our customer. It's not only one business unit, it's all the organization itself.
Very, very interesting, Pauline. What you're saying is like a reverse watermelon. You're actually giving an
It
example of
was,
that
yes.
SLAs were bad, but the customer was happy. So very, very interesting, which is there. So let me just ask, let's go into the XMO part of it, because that's also you handle that. So we have probably about 60% of our audience nodding along with the philosophy. The harder question is there in most XLA conversations stop, is that how do you actually do it? You set up an XMO at Computer Center. Could you just walk us through, like, how did you start and from an XMO perspective?
Yeah, I'm going to share our recipe, right?
Okay.
I think you're right. So most of conversation stop at the why with XLA, but the value is really in the how we do it, right? So as you said earlier in the introduction, we set up the Experience Management Office, or we call it XMO, so I probably refer it now as a XMO. And we treated it as a capability, not as a project. And we approach it very, very pragmatically. And I think we start with the outcomes, not the metrics. So we define what great experience means in business terms, and where poor experience creates frustration, cost, productivity loss. Then on the second part, we focus on few key user journeys. So we didn't try, to transform everything like the big bangs. We were smart, very small. So we picked 2 or 3 critical journeys and map then to end-to-end experience across IT and business touchpoint. Then the third point was around connecting the data. So bring together experience, operational, and technical data together. And that's where you see as well, not its silo anymore, but having the 3 different data makes tangible insights. And then the last one, the fourth part, is around the governance, how we put the governance in place and the action plans as well. So that's what the fourth part. And then we just basically put it in delivery. We started with the customer, we try with them, and we just evolve this journey on this, and then on several other customers. But I think for me, don't start with XLA. We start with outcomes and journeys, then build the data, the governance layer, and their priority model to continuously improve experience. That's really probably my advice for the audience today.
Yeah, that sounds very interesting. But I want to go a little deeper on the third point which you mentioned, Pauline. You talked about, I mean, in again with an XLA parlance, you talk about the XMO data, which is basically your experience data, your operational data, and your technical data. Basically, this sounds pretty simple, right? But it's in practice, it's not, and that's where most of the XMO probably collapse. So, what's your practical reality when we just say these 3 have to come together for
Yeah,
me?
and probably the team I'm working with in Computer Center would say, yeah, put in on paper everything. The theory is very simple, but then, as you said, the reality is different. I think for me, it's because the data, right? The data set is in different silos, so it's owned as well, sometimes by different stakeholders with different priorities. So it's all about as well business objective and the incentive that people have in their own units. So what we've learned is that the challenge is less technical and more organizational. So you need to get alignment, on why you are combining those data and the outcome you're going to have with it. So you need to have the right people as well around the table. And I think that's something we've learned with different customers. Make sure we have the right people with us, even if they're not, 100% IT related. They can be HR function, finance function, because they all own different data. And I think for me, I always say, I have this say, which is like, start small, start the reporting part maybe sometime as well manually, because we need to gather all the different data from different points, and build a view for one service, prove the insight, and then scale it. So it's a bit of start ugly and learn fast, I'll say. Because if you start to have the perfection from day one, well, you will fail without any doubt.
Right. So Pauline, that's good advice. But I just want to deep dive a little more on the XMO. I mean, is it a team? Is it a function? Is it like a governance body? Now, how should an IT leader who's listening today think about it when they need an XMO?
So in computer center, for us, an XMO, it's what we call a squad, right? So we think of it as the XMO like being the connective tissue, not a new silo. So it's very small. So usually between 2 and 4 people or 5 people, depending on how much, their organization is complex with our customer. And so the XMO doesn't own the services, it doesn't own the tools, it doesn't own the user, research and so on. It's on the conversation between all of them. And I think that's really what, translates user sentiment into operational action and operational action into business value. That's really their role. And size of the XMO will depend not on how big is the organization, how fast they want to act on their transformation. So what's their timeline and so on. So it's not about the company size we have in front of us. It's more like do they understand they need to change as well their organization, because when you put in place an XMO from a managed services provider perspective, you need to have as well some representative on the customer side. So that's something as well that you need to take in consideration.
That makes sense. But what skills would an XMO demand? Like what kind of a person would you put? Is it like a traditional service delivery profile, or how does it work? Because you're saying there are 3 different streams of data which needs to come in.
Yeah, and I think that's as well internally in computer centers, that's a conversation we're having, especially with the head of XMO, so Charlie Whitehead. And I think we come to a conclusion, because we're doing that now for the last 4 or 5 years. It's an hybrid capability right now on the market, and that's why it's so challenging, to find the right people, because you need people that understand, service management, but that as well can interpret, the data, engage with the business, and think in terms of experience. So that's a lot of range of skills, right? So what we do, and Charlie is doing that, really, really well in computer center, is like we're building the capability internally. So we're upskilling our own people that have already, strong IT or ITSM, foundation, and have as well other skills around everything that is linked to experience or DEX, for example, as well. So that's really what we're looking after, is like upskilling our own people. That's the way we do it in computer center, and I think it's working pretty well. I'm sure Shirley will agree with me on that.
Right. So that's interesting, because that maps into what we are doing from TaUB side when we are doing our XLA training, because most of the demand which we are seeing is coming from organizations who are already ITSM mature. In fact, the ITIL version 5 has a very dedicated module for customer experience. So yeah, we'll come back to that. Again, like I said, I promise this is not about TaUB. So one more on operation before we really get into a bit of a case study. What's the most common reason an XLA initiative actually failing in the first few months, if you come across?
So probably I'll say the biggest reason is a lack of sustained leadership support, especially early on, because XLA will surface, uncomfortable insights. So you will find some areas where SLA are performing really strong, but experience is poor. So this will create a tension, with our customers. So because some people will say that this is, my service line and I own it, but the SLA are green, so I don't understand why you're saying to me I should, improve something, because do I really care about? And that's what we found sometimes, not with the majority, but with some, IT, our customers and some IT even leaders I'm talking with, is like, we don't really care what the end users think, and they just don't know how to use, the technology. And say, well, that's my point. If they don't know how to use the technology, the investment you've just made of, 3 million in the AI features, well, you're going to lose it. And that's where, you're starting to have them thinking a bit different. And I think for me, that's, where leadership needs really to hold on the line and reinforce that the goal is improvement, not blame. And without that, teams revert to what they know, and the initiative, will lose credibility very quickly. So I think that will be my advice.
Right. Because I also do come across sometimes like the statement saying, when everything is working fine, why, mess around with it, and, why fix it? And, I totally get what you're saying. This, I think, is a perfect moment for a second poll. Pauline has just laid out the playbook. Let's see what, audience are saying from their journey perspective. So I will, launch my second poll and just quickly try to get some feedback from the audience. So the question here is, what's the single biggest barrier to embedding XLAs in your organizations? I mean, if you were to make a guess. There seems some hesitancy. Is this like a controversial questions people don't want to answer? Please feel free. This is, in fact, who has answered what option is not going to be shared. So
the poll is no longer visible.
You need
Sorry?
to restart it.
Why
Restart
not
the poll, please.
Oh, okay. Let me restart. Relaunch the poll. Okay, I'm relaunching the poll. Is it come up? Okay, I think Keith said yes, so I guess. I'll just wait for a couple more seconds. We got about 60% come in, so just waiting. So Keith says tough to pick one. I guess so. Yeah. Right. So let me wait for a few more seconds. It's getting a couple of people. Yeah, it's like a mixed bag. I can understand Keith's sentiment. So I will end the poll and I will share the results. So you have, I guess, cultural resistance is the highest at 47. Leadership comes next, skills gap, and data integration is the lowest. So any quick thoughts, Pauline, on this?
I probably say that data and leadership, that's something you can fix in, well, depending on the size of organization, months or few years, let's put it like this. But everything that is around skills and culture, that's something that can take years and years, right? And I think that's where most organization needs to really invest in, because if you don't invest in that, well, you can have the best data lake, and even the leadership saying you need to do that. But if the culture is not embraced, in all the company itself, well, it will be difficult. So I'm not, no surprise. But for me, data and leadership, easy to fix. Skills and culture, maybe less.
All right. So let's get into a little bit of our, this is my most favorite part of every webinar in terms of the case studies. So what worked, what failed, what surprised. So Pauline, if you were to get, a little specific from a case study perspective, and you were to take one engagement where XLA approach genuinely changed the business outcome, could you just share some, case study from your experience?
So we had this case study, right, where we it was a European customer where we have it was in their warehouse staff, so they use handheld device that crash roughly twice per shift. So the SLA on the device support was 98%, and the support team fixed crashes in under 15 minutes. So that was the SLA. Excellent on paper again, and nothing else to say from a service provider perspective. But each crash cost about 20 minutes of lost productivity per worker, multiplied by, there were like hundreds and hundreds of workers in this warehouse. So if you we were talking probably about, thousands of pounds or euros or dollars or whatever. And so what we've done with this customer, we've reframed, the metric to focus on uninterrupted experience. So a shift without disruption. So, and that shifted accountability system as well, not just for the support teams, but as well for the vendor and the device strategy. And I think that's where we see, the outcome was not only a better experience. It translated as well into measurable productivity, recovery at scale. And I think so the productivity back to the organization, it was around millions. We were talking over the 1 year, right? So that's something as well. When you talk with the IT department, most of the time, we say, yeah, but show me the money. But well, that's how you save the money. That's things that, if you were having this SLA in place again, without measuring the wrong thing instead of the right thing, well, you will have, spend all this money. So I think that's as well a way of putting it tangible for our customers.
That's a very powerful case study, Pauline. It's really, I mean, classical example, you're saying that the SLA looked all green, but the customer was losing money based on the crash.
Yeah, and they think they were measuring the right thing. That's as well, right? It's about which kind of thing. So because the SLA, so as managed services provider, we were answering to this SLA, but the SLA were put by the customer itself. So they were the ones saying like, we need to measure that. To be successful, we think you need to measure that. And that's where we started to, explain to them, well, we can measure it in another way. And I think that's where it all started as well. One use case, so again, the start small conversation, one use case can make, people believe, it's not about, happy people or the watermelon effect only. It's more than that. It's productivity back. It's ROI back as well. And it's obviously retention. And so there is like different, how do you say? There is different, I can't find my word in English. I'm sorry. I'm losing my my English now. But yeah, that's really the improvement part we're trying to see and how we're putting in with customer step by step.
So the business case is undeniable, Pauline, in what you mentioned out here. Now let's look at the other side of the coin. I mean, is there a project which didn't go well, and what was the learning from any projects?
So I guess it was about, so we had this customer when so it was different suppliers, right, from the customer perspective. So it was us, but it was other managed services provider as well, or other suppliers. And we were starting, this XLA framework conversation. So it was probably like 4 or 5 years ago now with them. And when we usually do it, we start with a workshop where we define, the things with the customer. And we've done it with the customer and everything was well perceived. The customer was, thrilled about it and so on. But then when we started to put the XLA in place, and there were some measures that were not impacting us, computer center, but impacting the other suppliers. And that's where the other supplier were not really happy about that. And they were starting, to complain to the customer about this. And I think that was for us a lesson, like, because the customers say, yeah, it's only you, computer center, because you're the one providing the XLA framework, so it has to be you only, and so on. It was really a lesson learned. And again, it was like probably 4 or 5 years ago at really the beginning. And it's like, okay, when we talk about XLA framework, we need to have all the different suppliers from a customer perspective. So now when we talk to our customer, we say, okay, let's make sure, as I said before, right, we have the right people in the room. And that's really important. And that's something that the consistency of having the right people will really change, the outcome as well.
That's a brilliant one. And the one I don't think enough organizations really think about. What about something which surprised you, something which you didn't expect at the beginning of the journey? Any examples of that, Pauline, which you'd like to share?
I think for me, it's the surprise was around, so internally, we have our, what I call the IT support team. So whatever is the service desk, is it on-site engineer and so on. And I think for me, I was not expecting when we we deployed XLA on some customer, I was not expecting those teams to react like they were so happy about it because we were improving, the people's day, the way they were, behaving as well with the end users, and our retention really improved. So that's something else as well. That I was not expecting this kind of things. And then the second one probably is more about, so this is more about, I always ask to customer, do you know what do you report and how much, this report is useful? So I probably say some random, number, but it's around 20% of the metrics, that the customer will have. So SLA, KPIs, and so on that are relevant. And as I said before, because most of those measures have been defined in the 80s and 90s, and since then, consumer behave very differently in the work environment as well. So all these things, that was probably the two surprise, if I can say, that I have driving, the experience within our customers.
Interesting. So they were, generating reports which nobody would read. That kind of.
They don't read, or they just do it because they've done it, for the last 10 years, and that's what we do. And most of the time, we say, yeah, but Pauline, we've done this, in the last 3 years, and we still have business. And I say, yeah, but if you continue like this, in a year's time, we won't have business. And I think that's the reality, and that's the bold conversation that sometimes we need to have. Not again blaming anyone, just saying maybe think different. And again, that's what I say sometimes. The IT support teams, they will have ideas, how to improve things and relying on what the end user, how they will operate and so on. So I think for me, that's very important. And to get to win, because sometimes in IT, especially, people think, oh yeah, if I have an issue, I'm going to bring another technology, another tool. But the tool doesn't solve anything. It's if you don't have the right, mindset.
Mindset, absolutely correct. So, okay, one more, Pauline. I'm so tempted to ask you another question about, assuming that IT leaders watching this webinar is convinced, but doesn't know where to begin on a Monday morning. What's the smallest possible step that person can take?
So I'm going to repeat myself, but I think sometimes repetition we say in French, repetition put the notion in the head of the people. So hopefully it will work. So I probably say start small and start with the reality. So pick one service, so one service line in your organization. Talk to small set of users and understand where the experience breakdown. That's exactly what is going to build your business case. To get XLA framework training and so on after. It's how we start most XLA engagements through targeted discovery. As I said before, you need one use case that can demonstrate the value out of that, and then you can convince, and bring the whole organization on it. Because once the gap between metrics and experience is visible, the need for change becomes clearer, and that's something that is really, really important to remember. And then once you have that, as I say, you can scale it in a structured way and get, your XMO in place and so on. So I think probably I'll say you need 10 conversations on a Monday morning, and everything else, will flow from that.
Yeah. So, Pauline, so this has been genuinely useful. Let me just try to, give some 3 takeaways which I have noted down for the audience, and then perhaps hand it back to you to having the last word. For me, the 3 takeaways are that XLAs do not replace SLAs. Okay, they are a layer on the top. SLAs keep the trains running, if I were to use that metaphor. And XLAs measure whether the journey was worth taking, if I were to put it that way. And there is a mindset shift from cost center to a value creator is a leadership decision. Like it's not a tooling decision, like you rightly said. Get lots of tool, but if there is no buy-in from the leadership, that the IT is now moving from a cost center to a value creator. The technology is the easy part of it. It's the culture, and that's perhaps came out in our polls also, right? Where it's a leadership and the culture is not conducive enough to probably implement XLA. And the last thing which you keep reinforcing is the fact that start small. Okay, and for example, you gave it a lovely example on a Monday morning, take one service, talk to 10 users and try to do a small pilot kind of a thing in terms of XLA in your thing. All right. For those of you who recognize the skill gap that Pauline highlighted, we run an XLA training program across all the time zones, like I mentioned to you. End of it, I think Neeta will share a slide if you are looking for that kind of a skills. Exactly the profile which Pauline mentioned in her XMO. That would be, in case that is, relevant to you, we would love to have a further conversation with you. So, Pauline, last word to you. If there is one thing you want every IT leader on this call to remember from a week from now, what would that be?
Well, probably, yeah, start small, I'd probably say, and engage. There is a lot. The good thing with experience is there is a community around it as well. So we have, the XLA Institute, which all of us, we're part of, contribute, exchange, and that's really the way of, from my perspective, in the world where I am, which is the VAR and services provider. We see things, the traditional way of delivering IT is very different now from what it was, 10 years ago. And I think that's something, it's a shift as well. And AI coming in, if you don't have, these data sets with you and understanding, the behavior and so on, well, you will be lost at some point, and all the investment that you're going to make will be, not on proper facts and data. So I think that's really my advice for you today. Think, experience not as something fluffy and nice to have, but something that starts the journey to build your innovative, ideas in the future or your innovation within your company.
Right, Pauline. So I'm glad you brought in XLA Institute, because we need to also acknowledge the work XLA Institute is doing in terms of creating a common framework and actually developing the concept of XLA globally. So we are exactly finished in 45 minutes. So that's great. And I would like to open this up for any, we have a 15 minutes budget for a Q&A. So anyone wants to ask questions? I think Srinath has raised his hand. Yes, Srinath, please go ahead.
Hi, Pauline.
Hi.
Hi, thank you for sharing your insights on how this was implemented and your expertise or your experience of implementing this within Computer Center. My question is revolving around, in terms of XLAs, who is accountable for the XLA end-to-end? Is there an ownership challenge that you observed in terms of who owns it? Is it going to be by service management, or is it the product team, or is it the operations or the new experience function? Who will own it? Because when we say that something is missing, they'd say this is not my challenge or that is not my challenge. Now, how do you see this spanning out when you're trying to implement? While implementation is one angle to it, the other angle is who takes ownership of something that's going bad and tries to drive it forward to see what we can do there.
Great question, Srinath. Really, because that's why we've put in place this XMO, so the Experience Management Office. So we have what we call an Experience Management Office lead. So it's under the banner of this lead, and then this lead report to the governance, so service management or delivery leadership team in our case in Computer Center. So that's how the ownership is shared, and we have a RACI matrix that we work upon as well, and that's what it is. So it's a share. But then the actions is on the XMO lead to be actionable with the squad that I've mentioned before, right? And then from a contract perspective, because for us, there is a contract with the customer, that will go to delivery leadership and service management.
Okay.
Does he answer to the question? Yeah?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Given we don't see how it actually happens on ground. That's where this question was coming as to what challenges could this happen. And I believe you.
And that's what I say. The culture is important. If not everyone in the company understands that their role to drive this kind of behavior, it won't happen. If it's only on one person, or one team, it will fail. And that's the thing. So it has to be co-ownership, I'll say, on that.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, Sheena, just to add to this, we've been in a conversation with a managed services company who is actually giving IT support to a financial bank in India. They are basically managing the IT infrastructure across some 400 branches. And when it came for renewal, the customer kept saying, look, guys, you keep coming back to me with some quarterly reports on SLA, but I really don't know if the guy in the remote branch in the rural, this thing, whether he's happy or not. Can you give me some data on the experience of that particular branch, this thing? And that's when that managed services companies approached us to give some kind of an XLA consultancy and, tell them that, because customers, like Pauline said, are for SLAs have become like an hygiene value. Okay.
Yep.
That's your basic thing. So what else can you do if you need to retain my, contract is where, XLA is coming. So it's become a important, like a business proposition also to measure.
Makes sense. Thank you, Kalidas.
Anyone else? I think Keith has raised his hand. Yes, Keith.
Thank you. So first up, big thanks to Pauline for doing this for us. I mean, you can tell that she has the chops for this, so to speak. What I got really enthused about, and I really have two questions, but I'm going to just ask my most important question. I love the fact that you brought up the customer journey, and I love the fact that you brought up having the right stakeholders and you talked about outcomes. And so, Kali, one of the things that you did earlier is that you referenced that even today's new release of ITIL has a specific focus on experience, right? And so, Pauline, if I think about the customer journey, I think it might be easy to embed XLA right from the very beginning. But now if I want to go back and retrofit it in later, so in other words, a longtime customer, and I now want to talk XLA with them, what I'm curious about is how your users and customers have reacted, or what impact have you seen for them specifically?
So when we move, you mean from a traditional kind of
yes,
support? Yeah. So I think for me, it's it's two-way, right? So most of the time it's like, because there is one person in the organization we're talking with, the customer we're talking with, that is, has the mindset on it already and is trying to convince the people. So for me, it's all about the use case, as what I say to you. So we take one measure, that SLA measure that we think is not relevant and it's driving actually the wrong behavior. So the one I've cited about, the desk or the warehouse one or so on. And then we say, okay, we're going, to measure it with a different lens, basically, and we'll see what the impact from an ROI perspective, because you need to get an ROI, so direct, indirect, tangible, intangible, whatever, or non-tangible. But that's what, and once you've done this use case with the customer, this will land with them. So it's as well convincing them, to be honest, case, and because sometimes they think it's showing them what they could save from productivity side, from even like hardware and so on, all this kind of thing. So there is a bit of benefits calculation that you will need to do firsthand with the use case. But once you've identified that, then you can explain it back to the customer and play it back to the customer and try it.
One thing I will just add, and I should have said it earlier, I'm going to be stealing a number of quotes that you used today. Right. And one of them is shift, not destroy the existing metrics. But I think you just talked about that a bit, just as part of the last question. Kali, I'll call on you again because, and again, you missed this the framework around service management that they all know. And Pauline, I just went through a lot of study on that literally over the last couple of weeks. So this is timely. And there's some thinking now, apparently, in that framework about embedding the XLA pieces within an SLA. Any opinions on that?
Yeah, so that's what usually, so you will need both, right? So when we defined, and again, this is, with the help of the institute that we had, years ago now with them, and the X Labs as well, it was, how do you define XLA, right? So you don't disregard, you know, the SLA. SLA are still in because there is some measure that, yes, you need to have them from a operational performance perspective as well, and so on. But then you will have to wait, you know, so that's what I probably will call the operational data. For me, that's what I call the SLA and the KPIs of the world. And then you add, you know, the technical data, which is more, you know, the monitoring part, the text tool part, and so on. And then the experience data, which is all around, you know, what we're asking to the end user directly. And I think that's really where we are. It's like, it's complementary. XLA and SLA are complementary, or XLA are on top of it. How do you want to define it? But the two coexist, and that's something which is really, really important. Because if you don't do that, you're going to drive, again, bad behavior if you just focus, you know, on one thing. So yes, definitely, they do coexist together.
Yeah, I think that's a very important message, Pauline, that XLA is not replacing SLA.
No.
It is coexisting with SLA. So I have Sanjay Nair, I guess it's not a question, but it's a statement. So let me just read it out. XLA is an element that has to take a classic top-down approach, leadership-driven, emphasizing objectives and importance. I couldn't agree with you more, Sanjay. In fact, Pauline's example of where things didn't go well was one of the places where probably the leadership buy-in was not there. So Pauline, any thoughts you want to add to this comment of Sanjay?
And as well, it's about the objective. So when you, as an IT leader, you know, you're saying, you know, I'm going to drive experience within my organization now and within the whole organization. And what you need to think about is as well the objective you're measuring them against. If you don't change them, and if these still, you know, are the traditional objectives that you're giving, well, you're going to drive, you know, the wrong behavior. And I think for me, that's this old chain, right? It's just not only, oh yeah, we've put one XLA in, now we're experience-led, driven organization, whatever, and so on. No, it's way bigger than that, to be honest. And you need to take this in, you know, that it's a journey. It's not an overall, you know, in one night, you know, a change. It's something that really, it's definitely a journey, and you have to have your leadership team as well understand what it is, what it means for them. So at every level, so you need to have a translation. I always say when we talk with the team, I to have a translation layer for each different function we have in our organization as well.
Yep, thanks. So I guess there are no more questions. So Neeta, if you want to do the honor, where is one more Kiran? I'm sorry, Neeta, just there's the main difference between SLA and XLA, Pauline.
So there is no difference. That's what I was saying. So the XLA is the ambition you're going to define, right? As an organization. So when we work with our customer, I will say to them, we'll ask them, you know, what's your ambition as an organization? Do you want, I don't know, to change the world, to have, you know, innovative, I don't know, trends, cars, blah, 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 and so on. So based on that, that will be, and then you will have, you know, below that, you will have the SLA part. So I don't know if it's, I probably encourage you to go to a training now, Kiran, on that, because that's really well explained. And within the institute, that's something as well that we have, right? Different documentation and learning about that, because there's still a lot of, I guess, well, education that needs to be done on XLA. And that's very important.
Yeah, so Kiran, just to say SLA is your raw operational data, your uptime,
Yes.
your first call resolution, etc. Whereas XLA is the sentiment analysis. I mean, it's the experience, it's a little bit of a emotional analysis of that's why it's very important to actually not only measure both, but try to correlate both. Because sometimes there is a correlation between your experience as well as the SLA. So like Pauline said, I mean, I made sure that this is not to do anything to do with TaUB, but Neeta is going to share. If you would love to have you join an XLA Foundation course, but I don't want to make it a sales pitch here in this webinar. So, Kiran.
Got it, Kalidas. Yeah. Thanks for the explanation, both of you. Yeah, we'll get that. I will connect with Neeta.
Sure. So, Neeta, over to you, Neeta.
Yeah. So, thank you, Pauline. Thank you, Kalidas. Thank you, all of you. This was one rich conversation. a few closing items. So as we had mentioned in the beginning, we are going to share the recording along with the key takeaways within next 48 hours. And if you have any questions, you could directly reply to the follow-up mail that we have. If some of you would like to connect with Pauline, we have, I hope you're able to see my screen, and I hope you can see the LinkedIn handle for Pauline. So you could connect with her. This will be here for some time. And if you would like to know more, you can always reach out to us if you do not have your phone handy and you still want to connect with Pauline on LinkedIn. If you would like to know more about our trainings, these are some of our upcoming batches for XLA Foundation in June, and we conduct more or less one training every month. We have both in IST and EST time zones. We also have the BRMP training, which is Business Relationship Management Professional. We also have some dates here for you. You could directly reply to our mail if you want more information. And before we end our webinar, I'd like to inform that our next webinar is on change management. It is about change always being chaos, but then this webinar is by John Merkis, who is the Chief Inspirational Officer, and it is on June 25th. You have the QR code if you'd like to register. So John is a keynote speaker, podcast host. He's a transformation specialist and also a change management consultant. And with that, we end our webinar. Thank you so much for joining us today. And in a time of digital noise, human signal still wins. So thank you all.
Bye.
Until next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.